All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we are unpacking the epic, blood-soaked, and honestly unbelievable redemptive arc of Emperor Ashoka. We're looking at one of the most fascinating figures, not just in Indian history, but in all of world history. We're going to trace a journey from absolute ruthlessness to unprecedented compassion. It's a narrative that forces us to ask a really profound question. Can a person truly change? Let's find out. Right off the bat, we're confronted with this massive historical paradox. I mean, how does history's most ruthless tyrant, a man literally known as Chandashoka or Ashoka the Cruel, transform into its greatest pacifist, Dharmashoka the Righteous? We're looking at two vastly different personas occupying the exact same historical figure. To really understand the enlightened ruler on the right, we first have to meet the terrifying warlord on the left. Section 1. Ashoka the Fierce. Picture this. We are transported back to 274 BC. Emperor Bindusara has just died, leaving this massive power vacuum in the Mauryan Empire. And what follows isn't some peaceful transition of power. No, it's a period defined by extreme brutality and a completely ruthless quest for the throne. 99. Just let that number sink in for a second. According to ancient Buddhist texts like the Dipavamsa, that is the staggering number of half-brothers Ashoka slaughtered just to secure his grip on power. He supposedly spared only one full brother. Now, while historians definitely debate the exact body count, the texts really emphasize this number to show a man completely devoid of familial loyalty, driven purely by ambition. So, his rise to power was, well, anything but legitimate. He violently seized the capital, Pataliputra, relying on Greek mercenaries. He laid a deadly trap for the rightful heir, his own brother Sushima, right at the city gates. And this sparked a horrific 4-year civil war where he purged hundreds of loyalist officials. His early rule was so unpopular and vicious that his terrified subjects officially dubbed him Chandashoka. Which brings us to Section 2, the beautiful jail. To truly grasp why he earned the nickname the Cruel, we have to look at this legendary torture chamber he built right in his capital to punish his enemies. The historical texts say he literally wanted to recreate the torments of the underworld right here on Earth. He designed this facility disguised as a stunning palace. From the outside, it was incredibly enticing. Fruit trees, flowers, these luxurious baths. But beneath that beautiful veneer, inspired by the 5 tortures of Buddhist hell, it housed absolute horrors. He appointed a man named Girika, a wildly sadistic executioner, to run it. They even made this dark pact. Anyone who walked through those doors, even by accident, would never be allowed to leave alive. But, according to the Ashokavadana narrative, this reign of terror was halted by an outright miracle. A Buddhist monk named Samudra wandered into the gale and was immediately thrown into a cauldron of the boiling blood and water. But the cauldron cooled. A lotus actually sprouted. Samudra just sat there, calmly meditating on it, completely untouched by the heat. When Ashoka witnessed this impossible event, he was overcome. He begged to learn the Dharma, had his executioner burned alive, and tore the entire prison down to the ground. Now, that's the legend. Let's look at Section 3, the blood of Kalinga, which is the historical climax of his cruelty. Around 261 BC, Ashoka launched a massive military campaign against the state of Kalinga, a region that controlled vital land and sea routes to South India. This was a war of pure, unadulterated imperial expansion. 100,000. That is the estimated number of people killed in action during this one single campaign. Keep in mind, this is the ancient world we're talking about. An army practically wiping a population off the map using nothing but swords, spears, and chariots. The brutality was absolute, and the rivers were literally said to run red with blood. And we actually have the emperor's own words on this, carved right into stone. In Major Rock Edict 13, he confessed. 150,000 people were deported, 100,000 were killed, and many times that number perished. Witnessing this monumental slaughter triggered an immense psychological shock, and this profound, heavy remorse in the emperor. The sheer horror of his own victory broke him. Section 4. Birth of Dharmashoka. The warlord Chandashoka basically died on those battlefields of Kalinga. And from that grief emerged a totally different, righteous ruler dedicated to moral governance, completely altering the destiny of the Indian subcontinent. This spiritual rebirth became literal state policy. As outlined in his edicts, he initiated a massive ideological shift. He completely replaced Puri Ghosha, the terrifying drums of military expansion, with Dhamma Ghosha, the gentle sounds of peace, righteousness, and moral duty. It was an official, public renunciation of war. And he absolutely put his money where his mouth was. He actively transformed his empire into this remarkable public welfare state. He abolished the death penalty. He planted shade trees and dug wells every 800 meters for weary travelers. He built hospitals. And get this, not just for humans, but for animals too. He even drastically restricted animal slaughter in his own royal kitchens. This level of state-sponsored empathy was virtually unheard of in the ancient world. Section 5. The Empire of Dhamma. So how exactly do you manage a massive, newly peaceful empire? Let's look at how he projected this new morality across a vast territory that stretched all the way from modern-day Afghanistan to Bangladesh. Well, he erected these magnificent stone pillars, just like the famous lion capital you're seeing here. He used these massive monuments to physically ground his moral decrees and administrative reforms throughout the land. They were essentially giant public billboards of righteousness, etched with his edicts to make sure his message reached every single corner of his domain. And the core message on those pillars was Dhamma. Now, Ashoka's Dhamma wasn't exactly a strict religious dogma. It was more of a universal moral polity. It meant active social concern, religious tolerance, and ecological awareness. He even appointed these special senior officers called Dhamma Mahamatras to travel the empire enforcing this code, ensuring fair trials, and protecting minority religious sects. Section 6, History versus Legend. Okay, so it's an incredible story, right? A Hollywood-level redemption arc. However, modern historical analysis asks us to look past the beloved legends. When we examine the actual epigraphic evidence, the stones themselves, we find some conflicting information that definitely complicates the story. Because when we look at the timeline on these stones, it creates a massive historical mystery. In his minor rock edicts, Ashoka indicates he actually converted to Buddhism in 264 BC. But the Kalinga War, the very event that supposedly caused his conversion, didn't begin until 262 BC. That means he converted over 2 years before the Kalinga War even started. And that timeline glitch fuels a fierce debate among scholars today. Was he a true penitent or a pragmatic politician? Some experts argue his conversion was actually a highly calculated strategic move. Remember that bloody civil war we talked about? By aligning himself with the growing, peaceful Buddhist movement, he could consolidate power, legitimize his highly contested rule, and pacify an empire that was totally exhausted by his early violence. Which brings us to the ultimate enigma. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Was Ashoka's legendary redemption a genuine change of heart sparked by the trauma of war? Or was it simply the most brilliant, successful political rebranding in ancient history? The physical pillars still stand, but the true motives of the man who carved them remain locked in the stone. Thanks for exploring this amazing piece of history with me.